Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from Ntp Server channel. Today we'll continue our lab, the Red Alert lab. This is the video number 34. I've been discussing in the previous video the following. I've been working with securing our Windows Server 2019 based on the recommendations of the Department of Defense and the Defense Information System Agency of the United States. This is part number 4. We have been working for 4 parts. This is the part number 4. We have been working for 3 parts on how to secure your Windows Server 2019. We have discussed a lot of concepts and issues, some of them related to your service accounts, some are related to securing your local users and Active Directory users, not to leave any outdated accounts or disabled accounts. A lot of things actually. Please refer to my 3 previous videos for more info. So we'll continue working with securing Windows Server 2019. We have stopped the last time at this recommendation saying that you must implement protection methods such as TLS. TLS, this is a kind of encryption protocol used with websites. So if you have an internal website you are working with, or working with an outside or a website outside or on the internet, you should only work with websites that use secure protocols, something like HTTPS over TLS. This is a way that you encrypt and protect the data from your client to your server, or from your internal network to communicate with servers outside your network. So here he's concentrating on securing the transfer of data inside your network and outside your network. How this is done? This is done through different methods. First of all, if you are communicating with web servers, so you should use the TLS protocol. If you are transferring normal data between branches and the main office, so you should use encrypted VPN or virtual private network. And you should also, if you are working with branches and main office, or you are linking your branches to your main office and you need the data that is transferred from the branches to the main office to be secured and encrypted, you should also use IPsec. So he is saying that if the data owner has a strict requirement for ensuring data integrity and confidentiality, something like secrecy he means, in maintaining at every step of the data transfer and handling process. So he is concentrating on the transfer of the data. It should be encrypted and protected every time or all the time. Information can be either unintentionally or maliciously disclosed or modified during preparation from transmission. So the data can be manipulated when it is transferred. Okay, so before it reaches its destination, it could be manipulated by a hacker. So we need to secure this phase. Okay, so during aggregation at protocol transfer points, he is here saying that when the data is transferred in a simple terms or words, during protocol transfer points and during packaging and unpackaging, these unauthorized disclosures or modifications compromise the confidentiality or integrity of the information. So if you have internal websites, you should use protocol HTTPS TLS to protect the data transferred from your clients to your internal website. Or if you are communicating with external websites on the internet, you should only communicate with websites that use HTTPS over TLS to secure the data transfer between your clients inside the network to the servers outside the network. So here he's concentrating on using different methods of protection of data transfer. So he's here concentrating on data transfer. So you should use different methods to secure your data transfer. TLS, for example, one of them, encrypted VPNs, and IPsec. So these are all kind of methods to protect your data transfer. Here is saying Use of this requirement will limit it to situations where the data owner has a strict requirement for ensuring data integrity and confidentiality. For example, here we are talking about the Ministry of Defense and the system or the defense of the Department of Defense of the United States. So they have very sensitive data. So the transfer of this data inside their network or outside their network, it should be encrypted and protected. Okay, so you should check all of these ways of protection of the data transfer. Here he's saying that, just a minute guys, he's saying that, just a minute. He is saying that you must have roles and features required by the system documented. So we all know that Windows Server 2019, you can install different roles on it. One of these roles is the domain controller. So when the server is changed to a domain controller, you can, through it, create a domain, and then you can join users and workstations to this domain. This is one of the roles. Okay, there is other roles, something like DHCP role. It's a role that you make a server and it is responsible for distributing IP addresses to your workstations automatically. This is called DHCP. We have DNS role, we have WSOS role, we have a lot of roles. Here is saying that if you have a Windows Server 2019 installed on a server, you need to specify what are the roles that are installed on this server, and it should be documented, and unnecessary roles should be uninstalled. So for example, if you have for example a server that was working as DHCP, for example, and WSOS 2, you are having two roles on the same server, and for any reason you decided to move the WSOS role from this server and put it on a new server. Okay, so you should remove the WSOS, okay, and install it on another server. So you should not leave the old WSOS role on the server. Okay, he is saying that unnecessary roles and features increase the service or the attack service of a system. Limiting roles and features of a system to only those necessary reduces this potential. So he's saying that you should only install server roles that you need. Any unnecessary roles should be removed. Okay, so this is basically, we can run a simple PowerShell command to get all of the roles and features on our server, and if we need to export it, there is another way also. So because he needs this to be documented, so you can go to your server and run a certain PowerShell command to get the roles and features on the server and check what are the necessary roles and what are the unnecessary roles and uninstall them, and then you can document or export the current roles on the server, export it as Excel sheet, so you can know after that what server has what roles on it. Okay, it should be documented. Okay, so here we will see how we can run a PowerShell command to get the roles on the server, something like a command called get Windows features, and we will see how we can get all of the roles and features installed on the server. And actually we need only the roles that are installed. Okay, we don't need all of the roles, because sometimes you have roles that are installed and some roles are there or they are already downloaded on the server but they are not installed yet. So we only need the installed features. Okay, so we will see here get Windows features minus install, okay, state, but this will not get you the only installed roles and features. We will see this command in specific, but if you tell him get Windows feature, it will get you all of the roles and features installed on the machine. Here we can see that the status, some of them are available, so this role or this feature is available but it's not installed yet. So it is downloaded within the operating system but it is not installed yet. Here we can see that, for example, one of these features are installed, so it is installed, it was available and it was installed. So we need to concentrate on the installed features. Okay, the installed features, we will see how much features we have installed, and we will see what we really need from these features and roles, and then the unneeded should be removed. The unneeded roles and features should be removed. We will see that we will run a certain command to only filter the installed features. We don't need the available features or the removed features. We need only the installed features, and we will see how we can run another PowerShell command to export the installed features in an Excel sheet, because the documentation says that we need to document the installed roles and features on every server in our domain. So let's see how we can do this. So we will go to the internet and search, because I don't know actually the command to get only the installed features and roles. So I have searched the internet to see what this command is, because I thought it was minus install state, but this was not the case. So we will see how we can run a PowerShell command to get the only installed roles and features on a machine, and another PowerShell command to export these features to an Excel sheet. So let's wait and see how we can do this. So here I have searched the internet, copy and paste, this is the command, and then we need to export. So here I have searched how we can export installed roles and features. This is a command that we can issue to install role and features. Just a moment. So here this is a website that I have seen, and this is a command that we can, after implementing it, it will get us only the installed features, okay, features and roles on the machine. And then this is another command to export these installed features. We will see now when we run this command. So we can go now and run this command. It will get us the installed features and roles on the domain controller. So we can press enter. So it will get the installed features only, not the available or the removed. So here we can see that these are all the features. So we can see these are all the features that are installed on the domain controller. One of them is the Active Directory Domain Services. This is normal because this is a domain controller. It is a DNS server, so this is a feature also because this is a domain controller and a DNS server at the same time. So we can see here that this command has filtered all of our roles and features, and it only displayed the installed features. We need to export these roles and features to an Excel sheet so we can document it and return to it later if we need to inspect or know what are the roles and features installed on the domain controller or any server that has the Windows Server 2019 operating system installed on it. So this is one of the commands. Then we need to run another command to export these features to a text file or to a CSV file. Okay, so here it is. It will be installed, or sorry, it will be exported to a certain folder, and this folder it will export an text file, and we will name this text file roles.csv, and it will be exported to a folder I have created on the domain controller. In the C partition we have called it temp. We have already created this folder before, so we will export the roles to this location, and then we will check and see what this, he's saying that performing the operation was successful, so we have exported the roles and features. Let's go and see what is this file. We'll tell him run, and then we will put the name of the server, then the C partition, and then OK. And then we need to open the temp folder, and then roles, and then edit. Here we can see that he have got us all of the roles installed on the server. So here we can see that all of them are listed here, so we can use this as a documentation. As the PDF suggests, we need to document these roles and features. And by the way, it didn't give us a way to export it, but I have already tried and got it through the internet. So here is another thing. You can export these roles and features, and you can import them to another server. So this Excel sheet or this CSV file can be used to import the same roles to a fresh new server. Okay, so you can do this. So for example, if you need to install the same roles and features on another server, okay, you can do this by importing. So we will import, this is the command, we will import the Excel sheet that we have seen now. We will import all of the roles and features in it to another complete new server. So this is a good command actually, we can also use when needed. Okay, so this is the command you can use, okay, to import role and features. So this is a good thing or a good way. So this is the PDF. We will bookmark this. I will bookmark this page so I can use it later. Now we need to continue working. He's saying that you need to have a hosted based firewall installed and enabled. A host based firewall. So this is normally we have by default the Windows Defender firewall installed on every Windows Server 2019 operating system and Windows 10 actually. So we will use this firewall or host based firewall on the server, and actually have another firewall or the main firewall or the hardware firewall. Okay, it can work as a firewall and a web filter. Mostly we all use something called FortiGate or Sophos. These are hardware firewall that will protect the whole network, but every PC and server should have a host based firewall, and by default it is Windows Defender firewall. Okay, most of us use this Windows Defender firewall. Okay, so you can use it or install additional software to work as a firewall. Okay, anyway, most of us use the Windows Defender firewall and it is enough and sufficient, but you should not use the Windows Defender antivirus as your default antivirus system. You should install another one because it's not efficient. It can only work as a firewall. The Windows Defender can work as a firewall anyway, so it will be used against, or it will defend your incoming and outgoing connections. So the base function or the base objective of the firewall is to protect your incoming and outgoing connections, and these connections contains data and sensitive data, so he should protect and monitor these incoming and outgoing. Actually it will protect the connections, okay, but it will not inspect the data. This is another feature of or another system, we will call it intrusion protection system. It will inspect the data transferred in and out of the system. Anyway, so you need to have a firewall installed. This is the basic, or this is the other recommendation. This is very normal recommendation to have a firewall installed and enabled. Okay, we can also, I think, inspect this by running a PowerShell command. Anyway, we all know that we have a firewall installed, but you need to check and see if it is disabled or enabled. So this should be inspected. Here, another recommendation, just a moment, let's continue. Here we need to see the other recommendation. Must deploy automated mechanism to determine the state of system components with regard to flow remediations using the following frequency. Host base is used for 30 days for additional network scan. So here is saying that you need to have a system to check your network for security flaws or security holes. I have used something like this software called Mcafee Mvm, something called Mvm. This is a system from Mcafee that scans your network for security holes. These security holes could be some protocols that should be disabled or they are outdated, or some software that are installed and not secured enough. So it is basically, it is a system. Something, for example, the United States Defense Ministry uses something called HBSS. This is a system to scan your network. Okay, he's saying it will scan your network and see if there is any security holes or something. He's saying without the use of automated mechanism to scan for security flaws on a continuous and periodic basis, the operating system or the other system components may remain vulnerable to exploits presented by undetected software flaws. So he's saying that you need to have a software to scan all of your network, software and operating systems and everything. It should scan it for vulnerabilities. Okay, so this should be done on a regular basis. Let me show you all. I think I remember the software that I was using before. It's called MVM. It's called McAfee Vulnerability Management. Yes, I remember it. It's MVM. Okay, this is McAfee Vulnerability Management. This was software. Let me show you all the recommendation, or let me show you all its description. It was actually now depreciated, or it's not working anymore, but let's see, or let me see you the description of it. It's called McAfee Vulnerability Manager. It's already end of life, so but let me show you all what is the function of this software. So he's saying that it is a web application scanner, helps you to ensure let's see what is it. Let me show you another description. A web scanner, the EOL helps you. Okay, let me have a look about what is the McAfee. What is McAfee Mvm? Okay, so let's see here. What is McAfee Vulnerability Manager? Okay, working with reality to define. It scans passive, non-stop, or actively sets the market standard. Let me see what he means by this. McAfee Security Manager. Anyway, I know it's a software to scan your network for security holes. For example, if you have a printer, for example, and it is working with SMB version 1 protocol, so this is a security hole, and the MVM can give you a report on it. So he will scan your network. For example, if you have a printer that is using SMB protocol, he will tell you that you need to remove. It will be a vulnerability point, and he will give it to you in a report, and will give you the redemption or the steps to solve it. So anyway, you need to have something like this kind of protection in your system. You need to have a software to scan your network for vulnerabilities. Okay, so this should be done, and this actually is done by the Ministry of Defense. Okay, so this is one. And then he is saying that you must automatically remove or disable temporary user accounts after 72 hours. So he is saying that sometimes we need to have some accounts that have high privileges to be used for a very limited amount of time. So for example, we all know that we need to disable the local administrator account or every machine and server. What if you need to use this account? So you need to enable it, use it, and then disable it again. What if you need, for example, if you need someone from outside your network to have some administrative privileges to solve a problem, for example, concerning one of your applications or your operating systems, you could create this account, give it for your technical support, and solve the problem, and then remove the account. So it is saying that if temporary user accounts remain active when no longer needed for any excessive period, these accounts may be used to gain unauthorized access. So temporary accounts are established as a part of the normal account activation procedures when there is a need for short-term accounts without the demand for immediacy in account activation. So these are accounts used in temporary situations. For example, you have a very critical situation, or you need to have an account that have high privileges to solve a problem, and this account will be disabled after that, or it is only used for certain job or something. So you need to very careful to use this account and then disable it or remove it after 72 hours at least. Okay, so there is some accounts that are having high privileges that will be used for solving critical situations, and they are not needed anymore after the situation is solved. So you need to disable them. For example, as I said before, you need to have some support from outside your network to solve a problem on one of your servers, and you need to work, or you need to have administrative privileges on the server, so you can create an account for this technical support to solve the problem, and this account will have administrative privileges after he finish working with it, you should disable it and remove it completely. So these are also one of the recommendations, not to work with temporary accounts, or to work with them and after finishing the situation or the temporary situation you should disable these temporary accounts. Okay, so here he will see, or we need to run a certain command to see if we have any accounts that are expiring. So for example, we know that there is, when you create an Active Directory account, you can set something called account expiration date. So what we mean by account expiration date, that after that date the account will not be used anymore, it will not be valid, or it will not be working. So you can do this. So you can create an account and you check the option account expiration date. So after, for example, 70 days or whatsoever, the account will be disabled or it will not be working anymore. So this can be done. You can create an account and set an account expiration date. So here this PowerShell command will search your Active Directory and see if you have some account that have this option enabled in it or checked. So let's see if we have this on the domain controller in our Active Directory, or local users on normal servers or member servers. So let's see if we have something like this. So you will search the Active Directory and see if you have any accounts that have the account expiration date there. We don't have something like this, so all of our accounts are permanent and they are used. Okay, so we don't have any accounts that have expiration date. This will be done on the domain controller. But what if it is a normal server? Then we should run a different command. It is stated under here, this is the one. We can run this command to see. Okay, anyway, so here they say that I think must automatically remove disable emergency accounts after the crisis is resolved or within 30 or 72. So here I think they have the same. He's saying that temporary accounts should be disabled or removed. Okay, and you should know them or delete any temporary user accounts that no longer necessarily needed. Okay, something like emergency administrator accounts are privileged accounts. So this is a local administrator account that are in response to a crisis situation, they are needed to be activated and to work with it. Therefore, emergency account activation may bypass normal account authorization process. Okay, so maybe the account will not be verified or will not be authenticated. Something like the local administrator account, it doesn't authenticate, I think. Maybe no. Yes, I think because this is authenticated locally, not through the domain. Anyway, so these accounts are automatically disabled. System maintenance during emergencies may not be possible, though adversely affecting system availability. Anyway, so we have discussed this step. You should remove or disable emergency accounts within 72 hours. Here we can see that emergency accounts are different from infrequently used account. Local login accounts used by system administrators or network or normal login access is not available. Okay, this is different. Infrequent used accounts are not subject to automatic termination dates. Emergency accounts are created in response to a crisis situation. Okay, so he's saying that, for example, local administrator accounts are not used frequently, but they are not considered temporary accounts. These are normal accounts, but they are used in certain times. But as for emergency accounts, no, they are used for a certain situation in a certain time, and we should disable it after that. Okay, so this is not like the local administrator account. The local administrator account, it is there and it is a normal account, it is used but on frequent situations, but these situations are there. But as for the emergency accounts, they are used only for certain or crisis situations, usually for maintenance. For example, the automatic expiration or disabling time period may be extended as needed until the crisis is resolved. Anyway, so here he is differentiating between accounts that are used frequently but not on short times. For example, you can use the local administrator account every 2 or 3 months, but you should use it. Okay, but temporary accounts are used for a certain situation and then they are disabled. So I think let's continue. Here he's talking about the same situation. We can run a PowerShell the same. We have run already this PowerShell before to run. Here is saying another recommendation. You should not have fax roll installed on Windows Server 2019. Unnecessary services increase the attack of a system. Some of these services may not support required levels of authentication or encryption, or may provide unauthorized access to the system. So here is saying that the fax roll, when it is installed on a server, it's not secure, so you should not install these roll on a server. Okay, so he is recommending you not to use the fax roll feature on the Windows Server 2019. Why? Because it doesn't provide enough security to your server, so it is not secure. So you should not install fax roll server on any Windows Server 2019 operating system. So let's see if we have this feature installed. So we can run a PowerShell command and see if we have it, or we have the fax roll installed on our server or not. So this is very simple. So let's go to our domain controller and see if we have this roll installed. Here we don't have it installed, so that's good. Okay, then this is through the PowerShell. You can go to the server manager and check roles and features to see if it is installed or not. Then another thing is to not install Ntp service on your Windows Server 2019 unless it is needed by your organization. So for example, it's Ntp Server. It is an internal, or it is a protocol used to transfer files. Okay, it is normally used as a storage that you can put your files and files and programs on it and allow users to access it to get their files and programs. Okay, to install it, or to get the for example the admins to get their source programs to install it on devices, or for the users to get their data. Anyway, it's not secure. You can use FTPS. This is more secure protocol. But he's saying that you should not install Ntp Server unless it is needed, and it should be secure. You should use FTPS protocol. Okay, so this is one of the things. So he's saying even if it is installed, you should be very careful, because it does not support encryption. So if you need to have a server or Ntp server to have your source or program sources are there and the user's data to be on it, you can create an Ntp server, but an enhanced edition of this server, something called FTPS. This will support encryption. Okay, so your transferring of data from your client to the Ntp server will be secure and encrypted. So let's see if we have the Ntp server installed or not. So here is saying he is insisting, or he is concentrating on the encryption and authentication as a way to secure the data transfer. Okay, so let's see if we have the Ntp server installed. We don't have it, and actually I don't have Ntp server installed on my network. Actually I have a file server which is more secure. So here we can see we have Ntp, but it is not installed. It is available, but it's not installed. So we don't have the Ntp. So it's if available or removed, this is not a finding. So it's saying if you have it available or removed, this is not a finding. And then we have another thing called peer name resolution protocol. This is a protocol. He's saying that peer name resolution protocol, I think it is used with some programs, but let's see what is peer name resolution protocol. Let's wait and see what is peer name resolution protocol. What is peer name resolution protocol? is a peer protocol designed by Microsoft, enables dynamic name publication and resolution, and requires, I think we need to have something like more detailed. Peer name includes an address. Working with peer name, okay. About peer name reserved protocol, let's see here what it's talking about. Is a peer protocol enables dynamic new. This was included, was introduced. Oh, I think it's not giving enough data, so it's a protocol used to transfer, I think, data, but I think we need to have more detailed about this. So let's see the Wikipedia what it's talking about. Okay, it's here is saying it is a protocol allowing internet hosts to publish peer names and corresponding IP address and optionally other information. Other hosts can then resolve the peer name, retrieve the corresponding address and other information. So it's a way to communicate, okay, something like IP version 4 or version 6 anyway. So so I think it's a way of communication, something like the TCP IP anyway. So he's saying that this is a protocol that we should not install on our server because it doesn't provide enough security. Okay, I think this is also a way of something like the DNS. You know, we have something called DNS or domain name resolution. I think peer name resolution resembles the same but in another way. So he's saying that the peer name resolution protocol should not be used in your network because it doesn't provide levels of secure authentication and encryption. So we need only to know this. We need to make sure that our servers doesn't have this kind of protocol installed because it's not secure. Okay, and I think it's related, or it is option, or its function is something like the DNS. Okay, so let's see if we have it installed. Okay, we have it available but not installed, so we are clear to go. So this is it. And then we have something called simple TCP IP. I think this is a protocol used for troubleshooting network problems. You can use it, and then if you have some problems on your network and you need to solve it, you can use the simple TCP IP services and then uninstall it or remove it. So it is used to simple TCP IP are protocols used to troubleshoot your network, but it's not necessary to be installed for your network functionality. Okay, so you can use it to troubleshoot your network, but it's not needed for your network operation. So it can be used for a certain amount of time and then you can disable it because this is not secure. It's only used for troubleshooting and you can uninstall it later. So let's see if it is already installed or not. And we can go to our domain controller and see if it's already installed or not. Paste. So these are all protocols and services and tools that are not secure and encrypted, so it should be disabled. We have it enabled, but sorry, have it available but not installed. Let's see how much time we have left. Okay, we are using for 38 minutes. Here we can see that Windows Server must not have Telnet client installed. This is a way to connect remotely to a machine but without a graphical interface. So you can connect to a machine and work remotely on this machine using commands. This is something called Telnet. Okay, this way of communication is not secure. Okay, so you should use it only for a very limited amount of time if it is needed, and then you should disable it. But it is not a secure way to connect to your clients or your workstations or servers remotely. So this is also one of the things. We need to disable the Telnet client, okay, on a server. So Telnet client, it is an option when enabled on a server or a workstation, you can connect remotely to it and work on it using a command prompt screen. So let's see, we need to make sure that we don't have it installed. In some situations I use the Telnet, but it should be disabled after that very quickly. Okay, so we should see if we have it. It's more easier to know if these features are installed or not using a PowerShell command, especially if you are working remotely. Here we can see that we have the Telnet client. It is available but not installed, so we can continue working. And then TFTP, this is basically used to transfer files between a workstation and a network device, something like basically like the Cisco routers, Cisco switches, or switches and routers. So this is a very famous protocol used to transfer files from a workstation to a device, especially network devices, something like layer 3 devices, for example, maybe switches, maybe routers. Okay, so it's a very important protocol, and actually it's not secure. I think there is TFTPS, maybe there is another secure version of this protocol anyway. So it's saying also that you should not have it enabled. By enabling this option, you can make or connect a network device to your workstation and transfer files between them. Okay, but you should, if you are in need of something like this protocol, this should also be enabled for a certain amount of time and then to be uninstalled or disabled. But I think there is TFTPS, there is another secure version of this protocol anyway. So also this is not secure, so you need to make sure that it is already not installed. Okay, so let's see if we have it. So we don't have it. This is good. And then let's continue and see the other recommendations. Here we should not, or you must not, no, we need to SMB1 legacy protocol that uses MD5 algorithm is known to be vulnerable to attacks anyway. So SMB, it's a protocol used to transfer files, okay, between a client and the server. Okay, so SMB, it's a way to transfer files between a client and the server, especially if you have a server that has a role of file server installed on it. So for example, if I have a server and put some folders and data on it, and you need your users to access these files and data on the server, the way to do this is through the SMB protocol. So he's saying that SMB, there is a lot of versions of this protocol. SMB, there is SMB version 1 and version 2 and version 3. So he's saying that the least secure one of them is SMB version 1, and it is already disabled in Windows 10 by default and on Windows Server actually. But you should take care not to enable this protocol for transferring of files and data between your clients and your file servers. Okay, so this also we should see it. Let's see if we have it installed. And by the way, you can disable this protocol as a whole from a group policy, so you can do this. But let's see if we have the SMB version 1 protocol installed. Here we can see that it is available but not installed. But this is not the file server. The file server is RACC02, so we should run this command on the file server and any other server actually, but in a specific the file server, because it is mainly focusing on sharing data and folders to the users. So we need to make sure not to have the SMB version 1 protocol installed. Okay, so let's continue and see the other recommendations. See, these are all recommendations to disable and remove unsecure protocols from your server. Let's see here that you must have let's see here what he's saying here is disabled on SMB server. So there is two parts in the transfer of data. So you have a file server, you have folders and data put on this file server, and it is shared after that for the users to access it. So there is a file server, he is the server, and you have clients, workstations, to connect to the server to access the files and folders shared on the file server. So he is saying that the file server or the SMB server should not use the SMB version 1 protocol. So the client and the server should not use the protocol SMB version 1 to access data, or to transfer or to access the data on the file server. Okay, so we should disable it from the client side and the server side. Okay, SMB should be disabled. Version 1, SMB version 1 should be disabled from the client side and the server side. So we need to take care to check the SMB version 1 enabled or not on the file server, and to check is the SMB version 1 enabled on the workstation. So we can check it from the registry and see it, or if it is enabled we need to disable it. So we have done this from the server side, we need to check it from also the client side. Okay, so here we can disable SMB to be used with the file server through a group policy. Okay, so we can go there and check the group policy and tell him to disable SMB version 1 on the file server, or the SMB server. We can go to there and we can go to our group policy and server hardening. Okay, this is the one, and edit. Okay, and then we will check, I think, Windows setting maybe. Okay, and here we can go to administrative templates. Not there, it is in administrative templates, and these we can see that these are the group policy templates of the United States or the Department of Defense. So these are two newly added group policy templates: security and the configure SMB server. Here, this is the one, and tell him to disable it. Okay, so SMB version 1 should be disabled. So here we will not use SMB version 1 on the file server. Okay, and I think this is by default actually on the file server, but anyway, so we have the group policy and it is already there. So now let's continue. Here is saying that we need to, so we have disabled SMB version 1 on the server, we need to disable it on the client. Okay, saying that to be disabled on the SMB client. So it is two parts, one from the server and other from the client. So this is basically very logic to disable it from the server side and the client side. So both server and client will not use SMB version 1 protocol to access files and folders on the file server. Okay, so here we will go and check it. Okay, it's something called SMB client driver. We will enable it and tell him to disable the driver completely. So, and by the way, it is already disabled. SMB version 1, it is already disabled on Windows 10 clients. Okay, or Windows 10 workstations. It's not disabled, it's enabled, and it's already disabled. Okay, you can do it as a disable. I don't know why they have done these two duplicate steps. Okay, anyway, so are still working with securing the Windows Server 2019 by disabling and removing unnecessary and unsecure protocols and services and roles and features. Okay, so let's go. Here is saying that Windows Server must not have PowerShell version 2 installed. Why we don't need to have PowerShell version 2 installed? Because it doesn't, because it's not secure, but it is doesn't have enough logging features. He's saying here that PowerShell version 5 has advanced logging features that can let you investigate and see what is going on your machine, but PowerShell version 2 doesn't have this advanced logging capabilities. Okay, so you need to disable it, because a hacker can use the PowerShell version 2 to attack the system, and after that, if you need to investigate what happened, you will not be able to do this because PowerShell version 2 doesn't have advanced logging features. Okay, so we need to disable PowerShell version 2 on all of our servers and workstations as well. Okay, this applies to servers and workstations. So let's continue and see if we have PowerShell version 2 installed on the server. So I think also this can be done using using group policy. Anyway, so let's see. You will say it is removed. Okay, so it is already removed. So this is on the domain controller. It is removed by default. Actually, I think, or I have done this. Yes, it's already removed. Anyway, and another thing, he's saying FTP servers must be configured to prevent anonymous logins. So we have said that FTP server, it is a way to let users access their data, okay, on a server, something like the file server, but it's not secure. Okay, FTP is file transfer protocol. It's a server that you put data on it and let the users access their data from this server. Okay, but there is a way, okay, saying that you can, for example, when you are having a file server and you are sharing data, or you are letting users access the data on the file server, this is done in a secure way. No user can access his data unless he have a valid username and password on the network. But as for the FTP, it's not secure. You can tell him to allow anonymous logins, so any user can access the FTP server and see any data he needs without verifying that he have a valid username or password. So this is called anonymous logins. You should, if you will use the FTP server, anyone to access his data on this FTP server, he should provide a username and password. He is saying that FTP services allow remote users to access shared files and directories. This is the main function. Okay, allowing anonymous FTP connections make users auditing difficult. Using accounts that have administrative privileges to log into FTP risks that the username and password will capture on the network and give administrator access to unauthorized users. Anyway, so he's saying that if you need to access any files and folders on FTP server, this should be done using a username and a password. Okay, and he's saying also that using accounts that have administrative privileges to log into FTP risks that the user and password will be captured. So actually also he's saying that if you are an administrator on the FTP server, you should not use your account as an administrator to log into the FTP server and, for example, access your data, for example. This should not be done because the passwords are sent to the FTP server, I think, not encrypted. So he's saying that do not use your administrator account to access FTP server for any reason. You should create a normal account and access within the FTP server. So let's see if we do these two steps. First of all, we should not allow anonymous logins. So any user, if he need to access his data and folders on FTP server, he should provide a username and a password. Okay, if this option is enabled, he does not need to provide his username and password. And another thing, the administrator should not use his account to access the FTP server. This, I think, the administrator, he mean the local administrator or the domain admin. So anyway, let's see if you have this option enabled on the FTP, okay, to allow anonymous logins. Okay, sometimes you need the users to access the FTP server without providing their usernames and passwords. Okay, but this is not a correct way to do it. Okay, you can use the file server and use the SMB version 2 protocol to do this step. Okay, so if you need the users not to provide their username and passwords when they access their data on a server, this could be done by creating a file server and use the SMB version 2 protocol or version 3 to let the users access the data on the file server. They will not provide their username or password, but in the background the system will check if these users are within the network or they have valid Active Directory users and accounts and their passwords are valid. And you can control who access folders and files on the file server by using permissions. So this is a more secure way to access folders and to share files and folders. Okay, he is saying this recommendation that FTP servers must be configured to prevent access to system drives. So here also I think he's saying that there is a way through the FTP server that you can access the system drive. I think this is very he's saying that an FTP server allows users remotely to access shared files and folders that could provide access to system resources and compromise the system, especially if a user can gain access to the root directory of the boot drive. Anyway, he's saying also that you should not share, I think here, should not share files and folders on the system drive or the partition of the system. Okay, anyway, so this is also another recommendation. We can see if we have any files and folders shared on the drive C or the partition C of the operating system. So he is saying you should not do this. Anyway, let's go to the next recommendation. We should have the time for the server to be synced with an appropriate time source. What we mean by this? We all know that every PC and every server or every workstation, every PC have a time and date, for example. Okay, this time and date, it is synchronized, or this time and date is taken from the domain controller. So if you are in a domain and you have a domain controller, all of the member servers and the workstations will take their time from the domain controller. The time is very critical, because if there is some differences between the time on the domain controller and the time on any workstation or server, this server or workstation will not be able to access the domain or access the network. So the time between the server and the domain controller, or between the workstation and domain controller, should always be accurate. Okay, so how we can make sure that the time on the domain controller is accurate, and the time between or the time on the workstations and the servers are in align with the time on the domain controller, this should be done using something called Ntp Servers or time source. What we mean by this? First of all, we need to make sure that domain controller, the time on it is always accurate. So we need to make the domain controller takes its time from an external time server outside. So for example, you have Microsoft servers, you can tell the domain controller to sync its time with Windows with Microsoft time servers, and then after that all of the clients or the workstations and servers can sync their time with the domain controller. So it's two steps. You need first to make sure that domain controller time is accurate, and the workstations and servers time is accurate or in line or are the exact time on the domain controller. So he's saying that you should he's saying that you need to sync the time of the domain controller with an external time server outside. Okay, here the Department of Defense have their time source, or they have their time servers outside. In normal corporations, for example, you can sync your domain controller time server with some famous time server, something like I will show you all what I mean by that. But anyway, we need to check and see. For example, if we have a workstation and server, we need to know the time where this server or where the server and the workstation get their time from. So we need to check this through a command prompt. Let's see. For example, on the domain controller, actually on the domain controller, it will take its time from itself. Okay, so it doesn't take it from outside, or I think it will take it from outside, but let's see. Here we need to check. So here we will run this command. I think I will run it on the server or on my PAW workstations. Let's see first. We need to check. Okay, this is on the domain controller. I think it will not do. So I think no, it doesn't have an Ntp server, because I didn't configure the domain controller to get its time from outside, or from an hour to sync its time with an external time server. Okay, so it's local. This is normal. But if you need your domain controller to have an exact time, or to sync its time with an external server, you should configure a certain group policy. Anyway, so he is saying that we need to check and see if this domain controller, its type is NT5DS. so I think this is correct. So this is the Ntp client. Okay, the Ntp server, it is local, so it doesn't sync its time with an external Ntp server. Anyway, so he's saying that the Ntp client should be NT5DS. Okay, this is normal, because this is the domain controller. We need to run this command on the client. For example, I run it on my PAW workstation, and see my PAW workstation that has Windows 10 installed on it, where it gets its time. So it will get its time from the domain controller. This is very normal. So let's run a PowerShell command to see this, and we need to determine who is the one that is acting as an internal time server. This should be the domain controller. We should run this on any server and workstation. It should say to us that the internal time server is the domain controller. So this is very normal thing to say. So let's see here how we can make sure that, for example, on any client, for example workstation on server, how we can make sure that the time server is the domain controller, the internal time server. Okay, so let's see. We run this command and see if this command will tell us who is the internal time server. Let's run this on our POW. So I think we'll not run it on the domain controller. I need to run it on a client. Okay, I think that this should be not run on the domain controller anyway. So we will run it and see who is the PDC emulator. So he's saying that the internal time server is RACC01. So this is the time server. Okay, so what if I need the domain controller to sync its time with an external time server? We can do this using a group policy. We can go and tell him to point to a certain server and gets its time from it, and then he will distribute this time from it. So we have two servers: internal time server, which is the domain controller, and external time server. The internal time server will sync its time with the external time server, and then the internal time server will sync its time with all of the member servers and workstations in the domain. So this is the two parts we mean. Okay, so let's see. This also can be done if you need an Ntp server. We can go and tell him time provider and then Windows Ntp Client enable, and then we should configure the Ntp server, okay, to point to an appropriate time server. So let's see how this can be done. We can go and tell him to configure an external Ntp server and point to it. Okay, so this can be done. I think, let me show you all. There is a way. Let's not take this one. So there is something how to configure. Let me show you a documentation of Microsoft how to configure Ntp server. So here, let me show you all. Yes, here to configure an authoritative time. Here, this is the one. This is the correct one you should use. So let me show you all. What does it say? So first of all, we need to go. Let me show you all. No, this is through the registry. Let's see how we can do this using a group policy. No, not this. Let me go and see here using GPO. Let's using GPO. Okay, so let's see here Microsoft saying how to configure. Yes, group policy Ntp original setting. So here, no, I don't think so. This is done. I think I have it already, but let me configure Ntp. I think here this is one. Ntp Server step by step. So this is the one. Let me know. I think I have one. I have it already. I have seen it. Ntp GPO Microsoft. Okay, so I think I have seen this before. This is the root PC as an authoritative. So let's see here. Okay, this is the one. Okay, let's see here. So yes, this is it. Here we can see that we can go to the domain controller and then open the time providers, configure Ntp Client, enable. Okay, this is the one, and then configure the type to NTP, and then go to Ntp Server and point to an external server. So we have two things: first to enable Ntp Client, and then to enable Ntp Server and let it point to an external time server. So this is the one. Okay, you can see it from here, and there is a lot actually of PDFs or a lot of ways that you can configure Ntp Server. For example, this using timesync, Ntp timesync using servers. This is another recommendation or another thing to do. Okay, so here we can go and see how this can be done. Configure Ntp Server on PDC, or this is the domain controller. Okay, so this can be done using registry, but I think no, this is through the Hyper-V. No, this is not the way that we need it. So not this one. So here is this is one. You need to configure Windows Ntp. This is the first one, to enable it, and then enable Ntp. So first, the first thing to do, we need to enable Ntp Client and Ntp Server, and then we need to tell him to point to a server. This one of them is called Pool Ntp. This is an external time server. We will point to it. I will show you all how we can do this, but it's simply to enable Ntp Client and then enable Ntp Server and specify the server. Let's see how this can be done. So let's continue and see how this can be done. We will go and do this so we can continue. Let's go and see. So here, let's go and continue. So we'll go to our group policy and then system, and then we'll go to the time. Let's see here. We go to system, then Windows Time Service. Okay, Windows Time Service. Okay, so this is on the domain controller. We should go on the domain controller. This group policy will be applied to the domain controller. Okay, to let it sync its time outside. So we need to configure these three. So we need to, let's see here, let me show you all. We remember that the one that I have closed. So we need to enable three group policies. Let's go there, history. Okay, so let's see here. So we need to enable the three. Okay, so we need to enable this three. We enable this one, and at this one we will tell him or let him point to an external time server. So let's see how this can be done. So we will go and tell him to enable the three. So we'll enable client, and also we need to enable configure Ntp Client. This should be done. Okay, and enable, and let me see also what he's saying by this. So if you go there, he's saying that this should be done on the domain controller. Okay, so this we need to enable the three. Okay, so anyway, so we'll go and configure the Ntp Server. Okay, to point to an appropriate time server or external time server. Let me show you all one of the free external time servers, something called Pool, or let me show you all by this one. Okay, so we need to configure Ntp Client. This is the one. So we need to tell him to enable. Okay, and then point. This is the Ntp or external time server for the Department of Defense. Anyway, it will not work because actually this is very secure one, so we cannot use the time server of the Department of Defense. So we will have a free alternative time server. Okay, so we cannot use it because it's very secure. This is for the Navy. Okay, so we will have another server. We will type Ntp Servers, and then we will choose one of them, something called pool.ntp.org. This is a free external time server. Okay, so you can sync the domain controller time with this free external time server. Okay, here this is because I am in the Africa region, so these are the servers or the time servers related to Africa. There is no one for Egypt, but you can tell him to sync your time if you are in Africa with one of these time servers. Okay, so the domain controller will sync its time with one of these external servers. Okay, so let's tell him to do this. okay, and he is suggesting to make it africa.pool.ntp.org. so you can use this as the source. There is, for Africa, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, there is 4 servers. If there are not enough servers in the zone, we recommend you to use Africa zone. So we will tell him africa.pool.ntp.org. this will be our external time server, or use one of these servers. Okay, so this is how we can do it. We can go, because there is no specific one for Egypt. Okay, this is only for Africa. Okay, so you can do this, or you can choose any time server, the one in your region. Okay, so we can do this. We can tell him to use this one, and I will put 0.africa. this is the first server, or we can use africa.pool.ntp.org. so we can go there and tell him enable, and then this is the server. We need to remove it. Okay, paste, and then leave everything as is. Okay, I think we will not need to change anything. Configure. Okay, so that's it, and tell him NT5. Okay, and that's it. Apply and okay. Okay, so this is how you can configure your domain controller to sync its time with an external time server. As we had said before, the internal time server is the domain controller. So every PC and every server will sync its time with the domain controller, and the domain controller will sync its time with an external time server. So this is one of the things. But I think we have passed a lot of time. Let's see how much time we have. Okay, so I will stop at this recommendation that Windows Server must have orphan security identifiers removed from user rights. So we will stop at the minute 51:10. Hope this video is informative to you all, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like and share. And if you need any thing, or if you need a private course, I am available. Communicate with me on WhatsApp, or on Facebook, or on Telegram. Thank you so much.